While many Black Americans view themselves as at least somewhat successful and are optimistic about their financial future, previous work by Pew Research Center also finds most believe U.S. institutions fall short when it comes to treating Black people fairly. A new analysis suggests that many Black Americans believe the racial bias in U.S. institutions is not merely a matter of passive negligence, it is the result of intentional design. Specifically, large majorities describe the prison 74%, political 67%, and economic 65% systems in the U.S., among others, as having been designed to hold Black people back, either a great deal or a fair amount. Blacks' mistrust of U.S. institutions is informed by history, from slavery to the implementation of Jim Crow laws in the South, to the rise of mass incarceration, and more. Several studies show that racial disparities in income, wealth, education, imprisonment, and health outcomes persist to this day. And we're not just complaining when we say this. I think a lot of times in these conversations, people seem to think we're taking the victim mentality, but this stuff is actually backed by scientific research. So we just want to make that clear. However, the facts are, while facing the extreme oppression of Jim Crow laws, Black people demonstrated remarkable resilience and achieved significant progress in various aspects of life, including education, business, arts, and activism. Despite the systemic barriers and violence they endured, showcasing their ability to thrive in the face of adversity.
During the 1920s through the 1950s, Black people experienced a period of significant cultural and artistic advancement, most notably through the Harlem Renaissance, which saw a flourishing of literature, music, and art in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City. As a result of the Great Migration, where large numbers of African Americans, so-called African Americans, moved from the segregated South to the northern urban centers, seeking better opportunities, despite facing continued discrimination. This era marked a time of increased pride in Black identity and expression through creative outlets, with prominent figures like Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Louis Armstrong contributing to this cultural movement. The thing that I find so fascinating about this cultural explosion and expression is that Black people were told that we had created nothing, that we were worth nothing, and that we were good for nothing. Yet, in the face of discrimination and all types of racism and just messages telling us that we were worth nothing, our people thrived. And we must not forget that, and we must not take it for granted how in the face of some of the worst discrimination and the worst laws known to man, dehumanizing laws, our people still thrived. And make no mistake about it, it wasn't just in Harlem. As a matter of fact, it was throughout the United States, in places like Rosewood, Florida, and in California, and Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Louisiana, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, St. Louis, and we all know about Oklahoma, and even in Brooklyn and throughout the United States. Wherever there was a Black community, the community thrived through the worst laws and the worst discrimination this country has ever experienced. No law, no president, no discrimination could stop us from thriving then, and no law, no president, no principality, no person in a high place can stop us then, and they can't stop us now. We must know as a people that our destiny, our success, is not tied to someone else's vision or someone else's plan for us.
Black communities created their own institutions like schools, churches, and businesses, which served as vital support networks and fostered a sense of solidarity. Despite severely underfunded and segregated schools, many Black individuals excelled academically, becoming educators, scholars, and leaders. Black entrepreneurs established businesses within their communities, providing economic opportunities and a sense of agency. What was Jim Crow, you may ask? Jim Crow was the name of the racial caste system which operated primarily, but not exclusively, in southern and border states between 1877 and the mid-1960s. Jim Crow was more than a series of rigid anti-Black laws. It was a way of life. Under Jim Crow, African Americans were relegated to the status of second-class citizens. Jim Crow represented the legitimization of anti-black racism.
Can you imagine if we ever played on an even playing field? And this is the history that they want to erase.
Many Christians, ministers, and theologians taught that white people were the chosen people. Black people were cursed to be servants, and God supported racial segregation. Craniologists, eugenicists, phrenologists, and social Darwinists at every educational level but trusted the belief that black people were innately
inferior. And we now know that is absolute nonsense. But just think for a minute. That nonsense was taught in schools and churches and other institutions.
Pro-segregation politicians gave eloquent speeches on the great danger of integration. Newspaper and magazine writers routinely referred to black people
as the N-word,
coons, and darkies. And worse, their articles reinforced anti-black stereotypes. Even children's games portrayed black people as inferior beings. All major societal institutions reflected and supported the oppression of black people.
And this history cannot be denied. You might not like us saying it, but it can't be denied. And this is what they want us to forget. This history, they want us to just blot out as if it never happened. Well, I say we should not forget. We must not forget. We always must tell our own story. Many of us in the black community believe that integration was one of the worst things to happen to black institutions. And history shows that it is in fact true. We were thriving much better prior to integration. With the end of the Civil War in 1865, hundreds of thousands of so-called African Americans who were newly freed from the yoke of slavery began to dream of fuller participation in the American society, including political empowerment, equal economic opportunity, and economic and cultural self-determination. Now, if we're going to tell it, let's tell the truth. And the truth is, unfortunately, by the late 1870s, that dream was largely dead, as white supremacy was quickly restored to the South. White lawmakers on the state and local levels passed strict racial segregation laws known as Jim Crow. Now, we stated earlier, we explained what Jim Crow is because we don't want to assume that people know what it was. The Jim Crow laws made so-called African Americans second-class citizens. Now, through it all, black people still thrived. You still had people, inventors like Garrett Morgan, who invented the traffic signal light, the gas mask. Never forget that Lewis Latimer developed a more efficient method for producing carbon filaments used in light bulbs. Never forget that George Washington Carver and agricultural scientists developed hundreds of uses for the peanut, including cooking oil, soap, cosmetics, woods. He made over 300 inventions with the peanut. Just a peanut, he made all of these inventions. And yes, all of these people spoken of were black people, so-called African Americans. In the face of Jim Crow, in the face of discrimination, in the face of segregation and degradation, our people thrived, and we must not forget that. That's who we are. And what about Marie Van Bratten Brown, who invented the home security systems that we use today that featured cameras and microphones and monitors? And what about Sarah Boone, who patented an iron board? That's right, an iron board. How many of us have ever used an ironing board? I know nowadays people don't really use them the way they used to. People wear clothes wrinkled, but back in the day, everything had to have a crease. The creases used to be so sharp that they would cut your finger if you slide your finger down the crease. So yes, folks, never forget who we are, and it doesn't matter who's in the White House, it doesn't matter who's in the State House, it doesn't matter who's in any house. We are the answer to our own problems. We are the ones who will solve our problem. It's only us. We need to turn inward and we need to look to ourselves. Our answer is in our own hands. Now, the truth of the matter is, I can call out inventions and all types of accomplishments that black people made during the worst times in this country for I can do it all day. But I just want to remind us who we are and that we should not be afraid of anything because the power is in our hands. And we do this because some of us forgot, and in fact, some of us never knew, that we've opened the doors for everybody else to come in. It was us who fought. It was us who died. It was us who stood up for freedom, justice, and equality in this country. And just in case you forgot, or some may have never known, we're just here to remind you. The Black Excellence and Abundance channel, where Black history is every day. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And remember, thou art rich.